These are the voices that make Missouri work. This is Profiles from the Heartlander. Well, Representative, welcome to the Heartlander.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. For people that are tuning in and watching you maybe for the first time and don't know a lot about your background, tell us where you come from.
So I come from a really rural part of Saline County, Missouri. I live in Marshall now, but I grew up 7 miles straight north of Sweet Springs, and it's one of those funny deals of like the way to describe it of being out in the country is had a Sweet Springs phone number, a Blackburn address. I went to school in Alma, and my mom works in Marshall. That's where we went for all of our shopping, like our groceries and the feed store and everything was there in Marshall. So no people, my closest neighbor, a quarter mile away, half a mile away, but out in the country. So.
And you have primarily called that home your entire life. You've never really left it.
No, definitely haven't. Like I said, I live in Marshall now, but when people ask me, like, did you move back home? I was like, well, yes, technically I did. I'm not on the farm. I live in town. I'm one of these farmers now that goes from town out to the farm where my folks still live at. So I'm back home now on the farm.
College football fans know you well from your time with Mizzou.
Well, I would hope they did. It was a real fun time when I was down there, 2005 to 2009. The easiest way to replicate that to people is I had 1 year with Brad Smith, 3 years with Chase Daniel, and then a year with Blaine Gabbert. And whenever I give that explanation, people are like, oh, okay, that's it. So we won the Cotton Bowl in 2007 against Arkansas. That was the year we played Kansas in the Big Border Showdown at Arrowhead Stadium, which was an absolute blast, probably game I'll never forget. But just a lot of great memories down there. I think my favorite one from that 2007 season is the fact that 10 of the 11 starters on offense were from the state of Missouri, and all 5 offensive linemen were from small schools in Missouri. If you start with our left tackle and left guard, we're both from Bethany. Our starting center was from Webb City. I was from Blackburn, Missouri, and our starting right tackle was from Bramer, Missouri. So just a lot of fun that it was Missouri rural farm kids on the offensive line.
What does that perspective help you with, or what perspective do you bring from that experience to the legislature, I wonder?
The correlations between politics and sports is fun. Like, you can take, leave it all on the field, leave it all on the floor, like just any kind of ramification like you want to talk about. For me, what I like to correlate the best is, the job has to get done, but working together. Coach Pinkel always said that, there's 11 of you on the field at the same time. I don't care what race you are, what religion you are, your socioeconomic status, your home life, the whole 9 yards. When you're on that field, you're a team, you're working together. So for us in Jefferson City, I always include the Democrats because they're legislators too, right? They come from different backgrounds, different beliefs, the whole 9 yards. But we're all down there to try and make Missouri better. That's our end goal, is to make Missouri better. I've got a lot of differing views on how that's going to work with people on the other side of the aisle. But at the end of the day, just realizing that they're down there to represent their constituents to make Missouri better and try and find those good common sense solutions.
Do you, prior to leaving football, or maybe when you were putting football officially in the rearview mirror, did you imagine that you would get into politics, or were you thinking you'd go back to farming exclusively, or where did you think professionally you'd go?
Oh, always wanted to farm. That's kind of one of the jokes I like to talk with people is, I'm not knocking the ag school for being easy, but you can teach people like agricultural type stuff. And so a lot of athletes by nature ended up in like, farm management or general agriculture was a degree program. And so I would walk in athlete style, sweatpants, sandals, hoodie, and people are just like, oh, we got another football player in this class. It's like, no. Like, I actually want to farm. Like, I'm here to learn, like, ag systems management. Like,
you'd have been into it without football.
Yes, that's what I would have gone to. Before I had the football scholarship opportunity, it was like, how do you pay for college? Like many people, many kids, many graduating seniors, people in high school now, how are we going to pay for college? And, I was looking at the National Guard route. I was looking because obviously they were going to pay for college. One of my dad's best friends and worked for us on the farm for a long time was actually in the National Guard, and talked to them about that. My uncle served in the Marine Corps, and he's just like, you do realize if you join and they tell you to go somewhere, you might die. And I'm just like, yeah, obviously I realize that, but I'm willing to do that. But then luckily, coming from a 1A Missouri high school football program, I was good enough to play. And so I got my scholarship to get my education paid for. And for me, I had 21 credits, I think, coming out of high school. And so I sat down and started doing the math, and I said, ooh, I might be able to get my master's degree paid for too while I'm down here. So I got both my bachelor's and master's degree paid for on my football scholarship.
Football, farming, legislative work, wildly different.
Absolutely. But let me tell you something. Two things that if you'd have ever told me I'd had to deal with in politics, I would have laughed at you. Like when I first started running, if you'd have said that you'd have to legislate against boys playing in girls sports, I'd have said, no, you're crazy. Like that's not a thing, is it? Turns out it is. And that's something in Missouri that I'm happy to say that I got a bill out my second year down there with the transgender sports ban on it to protect women's sports, right? Because that's the right thing to do. And then the second thing is being able to pass legislation to directly affect recruiting Missouri's colleges and universities, and that's the name, image, and likeness legislation. If you'd have told me I could get something like that passed to allow athletes that were, like myself, to be able to capitalize off their name, image, and likeness, I never would have dreamed that'd been something I could work on, but I have.
Do you wish that had, obviously you wished that would have been the case.
Obviously, right?
Yeah. What kind of, not to be vulgar about it, but what kind of money do you imagine in your day could you have made had that been the opportunity for you then?
Myself, probably not a lot because I was an offensive lineman, right? Like we're the guys that, we get hit every single play. We're probably the most banged up after every single game, but we're the protectors. Yeah. People ask me who I would have potentially gotten deals with. I'm like, well, Orscheln's Farm and Home, thinking
you would have had social media to sell, though, I'll bet you.
So Twitter was first coming out when we were in college, and it's just crazy how that's gone. Yeah. But you look at how people make a living nowadays. It's off of being social media influencers, and the following they can get. Look at, Riley Gaines, incredible, her social media following. You look at some of the highest paid NIL athletes are females. And it's because of what they're able to do on social media and promoting makeup and clothing lines and everything else. So it's incredible. I would have loved to have been able to take a part of it, but I'm glad that I'm doing my part now to help them out. And the thing I say, why not allow these athletes to earn money off of themselves while they're in college and while they, quote unquote, mean something, right? Because I had, I think it was 6 surgeries when I was in college. So I was pretty banged up coming out. If I could have made $200,000 when I was in college, $250,000, I might not have tried to put myself through the NFL experience.
Interesting. You are extending your run now. You'd like to become a senator in Missouri. And what interests me about the district you would ultimately represent is you come from a place in the rural part of the state that you know intimately well. There are obviously in this would-be Senate district pockets of a more metropolitan and populous suburban area. What does that mean to you, and how do you view the two? And when you talk to people from larger parts of the state, more populous parts of the state, and you represent a more agricultural part of the state, how do they work together in the legislature?
Everybody's got to eat, man. Everybody's got to eat. So I just try and bring that common sense ag farmer background.
Are they at odds?
Some people like to make it out that they are all the time. I don't view it that way. We're just people, right? So when I come to the city or when I'm talking, I got to try to remember to take off my farmer hat and not always talk about how these issues are important to farmers. I put on kind of my bridge the gap of, well, this is important to farmers and why, and then here's how it affects you, right? Like we talk about country of origin labeling for meat. Like that's important to the agricultural producer because they're potentially going to make more by their product being labeled made in the USA or produced in the USA. But then to the consumer here, like in Clay County or in the bigger metropolitan areas, they can go to the store with confidence knowing they're buying beef that was raised in the United States of America as opposed to a beef that was brought up on a container ship from Brazil in a quarter and a half and then packaged and labeled product of the USA, because that's the way it currently is now. So that's just one of those examples. I feel like I can bridge that gap really well. I hate leaning on my football days as much as I do sometimes, but I've been around people from all these different areas, all these different backgrounds, all these economic statuses, and became really good friends with them. And just, I feel like I can have that understanding of, what life is like up here. And then I can say, this is what life's like here, and just bridge that gap.
You also have kids. We sit here on the campus of the Herzog Foundation. The work that they do here. The issue of school choice has been one that has been wiggling its way through the legislature. What about the future of education in Missouri?
I think it's bright. Look at some of the things we've gotten done. I voted for the first ESA program. It was my freshman year, like probably 2 months in. And here I am with this big choice, to make on a school choice bill. I call myself a hybrid product, right? Like I went to it was K through 8, but I went to kindergarten at Santa Fe because they didn't have all-day kindergarten at Trinity yet. And that was what we needed for the bus service. But then I went 1st through 8th grade at a Lutheran parochial school, and then I went to the public high school. I think we've got a mixed bag, right? Like we've got a lot of great public schools, but we also got a lot that aren't doing it right. But I also feel like we're a more mobile society than we were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And where that school district boundary meant everything. But now it's like, I live in Marshall now. I'd love for my daughter to be able to go to Santa Fe. And I know there's people like that. I know there's people that, well, they live in the northeastern part boundary of this one district and they work over here where it's a lot closer and they'd be able to drive their kid to school every day as opposed to the kid going this opposite direction. So I think just having those choices for the kids and the parents to do what's best for their kid is vitally important. I think in the bill we passed this year, 727, that's solidifying funding for the public education to make sure that that's not going to run out. And we have that commitment to them of funding those schools that are out there. The teacher increase in pay, that's vital. We need to have good teachers. We need to attract good teachers and make sure that that's all well. So I think education should be looking up here in the state of Missouri.
Do you anticipate the issue of abortion being something that will come roaring back in Missouri? Obviously, we were one of the first states that moved to ban it. And now we've seen that it's been placed on many ballots, and every time that's happened, Republicans often are the ones who suffer pretty dramatically. Do you see that coming in Missouri?
The way I've heard it, they collected more than enough signatures. So it's going through the verification process now at the Secretary of State's office, and it's looking like it's going to be on the November ballot for Missourians to vote on and choose. And I pray that, that's something that we realize that life is precious and is protected to not get that in the state constitution. Because then when it does, it's just that much harder to come back and reverse and peel layers back to get it to not be something that's just an elective thing, because I don't think that is right.
Just for fun, while we're talking football for a minute, Kansas City Chiefs, could they go to Kansas? And what does that mean to the Missouri legislature and the Missouri government in general?
I've had those conversations with some people in Clay County. They were looking at bringing the Royal Stadium to Clay County. I've talked with Commissioner Jerry Nolte about it a few times. I even asked him, I said, what would you have done? Like, I love talking to guys that have served before and just picking their brains, right? I said, what would you have done, like, if this was up and you were here? Like, how would you vote if there was something that said, this is a package we need to pass to keep the Chiefs in Missouri? Because that's a big deal to me. And he said, well, it would need to be the right deal, for the citizens and the taxpayers and everything else in order for me to support it. And I was like, ooh, that's a really good way to think about it. For me, I played at the University of Missouri. Obviously, Kansas was our arch rival. Yeah. I mean, I love Kansas, but I like keeping that rivalry alive. Sure. I remember
that would be devastating, wouldn't it?
It would be a hard pill to swallow. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to do right by the taxpayers. And if it's a package that doesn't pay back for the taxpayers, then I don't know if we let it go. If, you counter. It's a very interesting situation that we're in. The news that just broke yesterday: Democrat Majority Leader in the Senate, or I guess Minority Leader, J.J. Rizzo, has been offered the position for the Jackson County Sports Authority to run that and head that up. Which I think, that's a good move for them and their interest, just to try and see, what might be on the table. But I know Kansas is going to make a hard offer. Yeah. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't you just make a sports mecca, over on that side of the state, or for Kansas around the racetrack and the casino and everything they have over there? That'd be great. They've got sports betting, which is legal there. Right. That's a big thing that's been tried to get done in Missouri for a while now that we can't come to an agreement on.
Why is that? Because that's something I'm just, I don't mean to make it about sports, because maybe a lot of people would say there are many more important issues. But from a revenue perspective, when you think about the Rams that left some time ago, now if the Chiefs and the Royals were to leave, that would leave, what, the Blues as the sole professional team? I guess unless
the Cardinals.
Cardinals, of course. What does that mean to Missouri? I mean, is that bad news to see those kinds of professional teams leaving the state?
I mean, I would hate to see it, but you would like to think that someone could potentially come fill that void. Now, we all know, and we're all smart enough to know, that with the Chiefs and Royals being in Kansas City, right there on the border, that there is a plethora of fans that come in from the state of Kansas. I think someone even told me the largest amount of ticket holders are in Johnson County, Kansas, that come to the Chiefs games, which I was just, oh, you got to be kidding me. That drives me up the wall. And it wouldn't be the end of the world for me, because it'd just be another like 30 minutes to drive that much further. But yeah, I hope that they can stay here. When you look at the amount of money that the owners have, like you want to talk about a disappointing thing, is that you have owners that are always wanting to come to the taxpayers to fund all of these stadium projects. And so I would like to see more from the owners of putting money into their team, putting money into keeping it where it is. But when you look at, someone pointed out, well, Lamar Hunt picked up and moved to Kansas City, from Dallas, because I think at that time there was some type of funding we were offering up here too.
Yeah. So in conclusion, Representative, you're running for Senate. What would you say to folks considering you or trying to consider who they'll vote for in the primary? What do you want people to know about your move to the Senate? What would you like to bring to the Senate?
Just that voice of common sense, that voice of reasoning. That doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for issues that are important or believe in. But at the end of the day, people want us to work. When you look at how the Senate operated last year, they didn't work a whole lot. They spent a lot of time arguing. They spent a lot of time in filibuster. They spent a lot of time literally doing nothing. Like, there were days where they'd come in and people would start arguing, and it's like, nope, we're not going to have this today. And just know that working well, working as a team, let's get good conservative priorities passed for the people of the state of Missouri, and get good legislation done for the people of Missouri, and make Missouri the state that it can be. I think we're right on the precipice of just having this huge economic boom. You look at what we're doing on Interstate 70, making that 3 lanes. Interstate 44, something they put in the budget this year, they're going to make that 6 lanes. Interstate 70, 6 lanes, 3 lanes on both sides. You understand where I'm at? Gotcha. I think we're just right there for this state to just take off and be a major economic powerhouse because of our location in the United States. We're, a drive to the coast and a drive to the Gulf, and the business hub that we could be for many major corporations. I think we're just ready to take off, and I want to be a part of making sure that we do that.
Representative, thanks for visiting today.
Thank you so much.
Hope you'll come back.
I'll definitely do that. Invite me.
Thank you.